President Putin hoped that his war on Ukraine would divide NATO. Instead, he's united NATO in support of Ukraine and in defense of its own members. He's brought countries around the world together to support the fundamental principles of sovereignty and independence. That is why we will continue to stand with a democratic, independent, sovereign Ukraine until this terrible war is over, and for that matter, long after.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken yesterday stressing the importance of a united NATO alliance as Russia's assault continues in Ukraine. Blinken's comments came during a joint news conference with the Secretary General of NATO, who is in the United States to meet with senior American officials, including with President Joe Biden. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg joins us now. Mr. Secretary General, thanks for joining us before your meeting with President Biden. Part of that expansion that you've been talking about, part of that expansion that Secretary Blinken was talking about yesterday, which is one of the many reasons, one of the many ways that this invasion has backfired on Vladimir Putin, is to add countries rather than to divide NATO. What is the progress in Turkey standing in the way of those two countries joining NATO? Are you confident it will happen?
The most important message is that President Putin wanted less NATO, and now is getting more NATO military presence in the eastern part of the alliance, and more NATO members, because it is an historic decision by Finland and Sweden to apply for membership. Turkey has expressed some security concerns. And then we have to do as we always do in NATO, and that is to sit down and find a united way forward. And therefore, I have invited senior officials from Turkey, from Ankara, from Stockholm and Helsinki, Finland and Sweden, to sit down and address those concerns. And that is something we'll do in the coming days.
And are you confident, Mr. Secretary General, that that will happen? You've expressed some confidence that it will happen in the next few weeks, that Turkey's position is not an intractable one, and that Finland and Sweden will, in fact, join NATO?
I'm still confident. At the same time, of course, we need 30 allies to agree, and that's exactly also why we are sitting down and are now working hard on this. We have to remember that Finland and Sweden as members will strengthen NATO. It will really make NATO an even stronger alliance. At the same time, we also have to fully recognize that Turkey is an important ally. Just their strategic geographic location bordering Iraq and Syria playing an important role in the fight against ISIS, Daesh, but also a Black Sea country close to Russia. All of that makes Turkey an important ally, and when they raise security concerns, we have to take that seriously.
Mr. Secretary General, you already pointed out one consequence of Russia's invasion, which is an expanded NATO, it would appear. But certainly there's a great topic of conversation in Washington and other world capitals as to how and when this war ends. And, of course, that's a great mystery. But there is growing concern among senior officials that this could stretch for months and months, if not a year or more. How worried are you about this alliance and keeping it together and keeping all these other countries, these Western countries, invested, sending military aid, humanitarian aid, and funding to Ukraine, which it so desperately needs, if that stretches for months and months?
Wars are by nature unpredictable, and therefore no one can tell when and how this war will end. But we need to be prepared for the long haul, and therefore it is extremely important that we continue to provide significant military support to Ukraine. And I would like to commend the United States for its leadership in providing support to Ukraine, also with the announcement yesterday, but also European allies and partners are doing more, Canada among them. What we have seen over the last months is actually unprecedented unity among NATO allies and partners, both in providing support, but also in imposing heavy sanctions on Russia, and not least deploying more NATO troops to the eastern part of the alliance to send a very clear message to Moscow that we are there to protect and defend all allies. This is deterrence, and that's not to provoke a conflict, but prevent escalation of the conflict beyond Ukraine.
Mr. Secretary, thus far, NATO's appearance and support of Ukraine has been impressive, and it's been unified, thanks largely, I would think, to the President of the United States and yourself. But could you please talk about the difficulty dealing with President Orban of Hungary. He's muddied the waters a bit occasionally. What is the situation with him?
We are an alliance of 30 allies, and of course there will always be some differences, some discussions. But the strength of the transatlantic bond of NATO is that we have been able to overcome those differences and actually make unprecedented decisions, both on increased presence with our forces in the eastern part of the alliance, and that includes Hungary, where we now have a new NATO battle group for the first time in our history, to send a clear message to Moscow, but also the economic sanctions which EU, NATO allies have implemented, and Hungary has been part of that. These decisions are difficult, and there are also sometimes different views, but then we discuss and we find a common ground and a way to move forward together. So that is the overall picture of the last months, the strong unity among NATO allies and North America and Europe.
Mr. Secretary General, you're on your way to meet with the President of the United States in just a few moments. You'll also speak with his National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. What message will you be bringing to the President?
It is that, first of all, this is actually to commend the United States for how the United States has been able to really unite North America and Europe in NATO, to make these unprecedented decisions on sanctions, on military support and economic support, and also lead in increased military presence in the eastern part of the alliance. But second, of course, it will be to discuss with the President how to ensure that all allies continue to stand together to provide support to Ukraine, because we have to ensure that the brutal invasion by President Putin do not pay off, and that Ukraine prevails as an independent, sovereign nation, democratic free nation in Europe.
All right, we will let you head out to those meetings. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, thank you for your time this morning, sir. We appreciate it.